Hey guys, this is DMS3.
And this is JD.
And welcome to the Unnamed Audio Podcast.
The only dedicated audio podcast on the internet.
So, this is kind of our episode 0, very first one that we've done, and it's more or less an experiment to kind of see how things work out. But with that in mind, we both figured it'd be a good idea to kind of talk about our sound preferences before we get into, what we do and what we don't like and, what we do and don't recommend. So, with that being said, I guess let's talk about that. So, personally, I'm more of a fan of, neutral headphones. I really like the HE400, the 598, the HT650s. I know the 598 is a little bit less neutral, but, you kind of get the idea.
And I'm actually more of a fan of kind of a warm sound signature. Think something like LCD2s or Focal Ealier, or the sound that you would kind of get from tube amps.
Delicious, expensive tube amps.
Exactly. I'm a fan of the neutral. I'm not a big guy for bright headphones for buyers and stuff. Those tend to get a little too bright and hurt my ears.
And with that in mind, you can also kind of tell that I'm a little bit newer into some of the hi-fi stuff. I've kind of stayed in the sub $400 range, and JD's kind of a big baller. So it kind of gives you an idea as to our categories as well.
Also, you're an audio engineer. You kind of need neutral, whereas I'm just into this for the enjoyment of audio. And, I like to just sit back, relax, and enjoy some music.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, I've been an audio engineer for quite some time, and you are definitely a hardcore enthusiast. So, I guess with that being said, I guess we should get into our recommendations. How does that sound?
Definitely. The first thing we should probably talk about are amps and DACs, because I feel like they're less subjective than headphones.
Right. And
generally, for a lot of headphones, you really need a good amp and DAC to take advantage of it. And in my experience, at least, amps and DACs, yes, you need them with higher end headphones. You absolutely need them, but they do bring an improvement to lower end stuff. You probably shouldn't spend more on your source component than your headphones, but it's good to get a solid DAC amp.
So I guess with all that in mind, so amps and DACs. We've got these organized by price, so starting around $100-ish, because really under that, onboard audio, as you said, onboard audio is pretty decent. So in the sub $100 category, it's not really worth getting a dedicated amp and DAC.
Definitely.
So, I recently did a review on the Full of 2, and that's right at $100, and I've been pretty fond of that one. Now, you recently introduced me to Monoprice. I know that you have had some really good things to say about them, and they've kind of started coming up more lately.
Yeah, Monoprice they're well known as a manufacturer of really inexpensive, really pretty decent quality cables. You can get USB cables from them for $2 a pop, RCA cables for $2 a pop, stuff like that. They have a desktop DAC amp, which, as of the recording of this episode, is $70, but the normal on sale, but the normal price is about $100. That has tons of features. It's got knob, it's got pre-outs, it's got analog in, it's got a really decent amount of power, it's got a solid DAC chip, it's got a pretty solid amp stage, and really it's an extremely solid desktop amp for $100. The only downside to it really is that it's not portable at all. It has a wall wart. You're definitely using that at your desk, not taking it, on the subway with you.
Exactly. I will say that is one of the benefits of the Full of 2 is just the ability, if you need to hook it up and power it off of a phone that has USB Type-C. That being said, I think there was another one you had on the list too that I actually personally have not heard of before.
Yeah, the third DAC at the $100 price range, which again is exactly $100, is the AudioQuest Dragonfly Black, and it's just a little USB stick, looks like a little thumb drive, and all it is just USB on one end that you just plug straight into your computer, and a headphone jack on the other end. And it's actually like really high quality for the price. It can drive a surprisingly large amount of headphones surprisingly well. Even relatively hard to drive stuff like some planars and like HD 650s, HD 800s, stuff like that. And it has very few features. It has no knob. It has only USB as the input and the headphone jack as the output. But it's really good sound quality, and
just kind of plain and simple, and does the job.
Exactly. And you can plug this one up to your iPhone for use on the go with the camera connection kit.
There you go.
Which none of the others we've mentioned have, because they pull too much power.
And from there, we jump straight from the $100 range to the $300+ range. And with that, I actually do want to add one little thing. And this is something a lot of people mentioned on the review I did of the Fulla 2. People were like, well, I already have a Fulla 2, and I was thinking about getting the Madi Magni combination. And the thing is that I don't think the improvements for that price range is worth upgrading if you already have a Monoprice or a Fulla or something like that, which is why we're kind of jumping straight from the $100 to the $300 range.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And so, at that $300 range, so for about $360 shipped to the US, there's a company out of China called Audio GD that makes just amazingly high quality DAC amp combo boxes that are just incredibly good. They're some of the best DAC and amps that I've ever heard. And for about $360, you can get their NFB 11 model, which is just really powerful. It has a ton of features. There's almost nothing it can't do. The only real downside to it is, you've got to order from China, so it takes about a week, and their ordering process is just with email. They don't have like a order your thing on their website, which kind of sucks, but it's well worth the little bit of headache you have to go through there.
And with that in mind, too, I think we're going to talk a good bit probably about the specifications of that one and get really into detail with that one, kind of, I guess, in episode 1.
Maybe in episode 1, maybe in future episodes, we'll talk more about like amp topologies and stuff like that, and why the topology that Audio GD uses is so good. But that's for future episodes. You got to leave them wanting more.
Exactly. And that's something I'm kind of excited to talk about, so I'll be building up to that. Moving up from there, we're getting into the $800 range with another one from Audio GD, actually, in the same line, in the NFB line, and it looks like the NFB 28.
Yeah. So the NFB 28 is actually pretty much just a balanced version of the NFB 11. It's just got like way more power. It's got analog in, it's got balanced out for, let's say, your powered monitors. It has a remote. There's kind of like, this is kind of like, the only box you'll ever need, and it can power pretty much some of the, like most power hungry headphones on the planet that have ever been made.
Jeez.
Yeah, which we'll probably be getting into talking about, power hungry, headphone sensitivity and impedance and stuff like that also in a future episode.
Right, because as I recently learned, impedance isn't the only thing that can make a headphone difficult to drive, seeing as the difference between the 650s, which are 300 ohms, being significantly easier to drive than the Hi-Fiman HE400, which are only 35 ohms. So, I've got a little bit of learning to do there. We also listed a tube amp in here, which is the Valhalla 2, ranging right in at $350, which I believe, is that the only one that Schiit makes that is an OTL?
Yes, that's the only one that's OTL stands for output transformerless. It has its, OTL has its downsides versus tube hybrid, but generally, if you're talking about the tube amp, in my opinion, you're talking OTL, and yeah, that is Schiit's only OTL model.
I have heard before too that OTLs are more or less for headphones like Sennheiser and thing like that. I've heard that they're not very good for hi-fi men and whatnot. I actually heard that in a hi-fi men review. Someone was talking specifically about how OTL amps like the Crack and things like that just are not suited for planars.
And you know, for those who don't really know, planars are generally like hi-fi men's and Odyssey headphones and stuff like that. There are also a lot of DIY tube designs that you pretty much have to, you know, you get a circuit board, you get some, you know, electrical components, and you get some tubes, and you're expected to like solder a bunch of stuff and put a bunch of stuff together. But we're not really going to go into that too much because, you know, we kind of figure if you're into that DIY stuff,
you probably already know what you're doing.
You can probably figure out like, exactly,
right.
You can figure out what you need and what you're doing. And now let's roll straight into headphones.
Yeah, now that we got DACs and amps out of the way. So the first one here is actually one that you recommended, the Philips SHP 9500, right at $60.
Yeah, those are about $60. They tend to be a little cheaper, oddly, on Newegg.com than Amazon, but you can find them for around about...
I actually didn't even know Newegg sold headphones.
Yeah.
Huh.
You can find them for around about $60, $70, $50 to $70, something like that. These are just like very basic open headphones that are just really not, like there's nothing particularly bad about them. They're fairly neutral. They're fairly inexpensive. They perform fairly well. I really can't complain about them. You know, they're good little headphones.
Yeah, they get the job done and they're at the right price. The price is right.
Exactly.
And right after that, let's see, at $150 is the HD 598. And actually, I added that one to the list because I know not everyone's a fan of them, but they've become really popular over the past, I think, 2 to 3 years. And the HD 598, I mean, they're not phenomenal, but when you put them on and put on the HD 650 side by side, you can tell that they're related. The 598 is a little bit less exciting to listen to, but overall, I mean, for the price, I'd say it's a reasonably well-rounded open back headphone and definitely comfortable.
Yeah. It tends to be a little more A-shaped, which means the mids are a little bit forward and kind of hit you a little more than the bass and the treble. Mm-hmm. But all in all, they're really not that bad.
Relatively relaxed.
Yeah. Then at $200, we have an entry that's going to show up actually twice on this list. The Monoprice M560 Planar. This is a relative newcomer.
I've got a set of those coming in tomorrow.
Nice. Yeah, these kind of were very recently released in about the past month as of this recording. And they are just really, really impressive headphones. They've got like a slightly warm tone with slightly forward mids. The treble isn't too veiled or too fatiguing. They're really light. They're really comfortable. They've got great cables. They've got great build quality. They're just all in all, just really, really, really good headphones, especially for the price.
And phenomenally cheap for planars.
Yeah, really cheap for planars.
And I guess on the subject of just like great open backs, right after that at $300 is the HD 650, which, I mean, pretty much anybody who's gotten into hi-fi has heard about the HD 650. You can't really go wrong with that. I mean, they're pretty much about as well known as Miatas.
Yeah. They're more of a warmer headphone, whereas
they're known for that classic veil.
Yeah. Whereas the HD 600, which is their little brother, that's about $250, is again that more standard Sennheiser sound that's a little more A-shaped, more so than warm. But the 600s are actually really impressive, and the 650s are again like built really well, just generally really good overall headphones.
Right, and if you're gonna get the 600s, the 650, in my opinion, is just worth the extra like $50.
I completely agree with you there, especially because in my experience, the cable that comes with the HD 600s, for example, is not very well made, and you might as well upgrade the cable, which is going to add $20 to $30 to the cost, and at that point, you're $20 or $30 closer to the HD 650, which has a great cable in my opinion.
Right. Another thing with the HD 650 is that it's one of those sets of headphones that as you continue to get nicer and nicer amps for it, you're always kind of surprised, like, wow, I didn't know these could sound this good. They kind of always scale really well with your equipment.
Yeah. The 650s are really well known to pretty much scale kind of infinitely.
And with that being said, let's see. The next one on here is it's not really official on the list yet, but it's more of like we expect this to be here.
Yeah. At $300, we have the Monoprice M1060. As of this recording, it should be released in about a month, around February 9th, 2017. And the rumor is it's going to be competing with Odyssey's LCD line in terms of sound quality and probably in terms of sound signature.
Which could be game-changing.
Yeah, that could be really game-changing considering it's, a third the price of Odyssey stuff. And given how well-made the Monoprice's M560 is, that could be killer if it's a really well-made planar that sounds amazing for $300.
Exactly. And see, that could bring that level of quality of the LCD series as far as sound goes to people who can, normally not afford that. Like I myself have never actually heard anything in the LCD series, although I've really, really wanted to. And I'll probably have a set of them used eventually, but that's just, it's not super obtainable for everyone in hi-fi.
Yeah. And now we're moving into sort of the, I would say more the what I tend to consider the hi-fi range of stuff, and we're about to hit
the enthusiast.
Yeah, the $1,000,
Speaking of the LCD series.
Yeah, speaking of the LCD series, moving right along at $1,000, there's the Odyssey LCD2. This is a great headphone. It's got really, really good detail, really good sound. It's pretty warm and dark of a sound signature, but it's just a really nice headphone to use to enjoy music. I personally find it just a little bit heavy on my head, but and there are some reliability issues with Odyssey headphones, but all in all, those are pretty minor for the sound you get and the enjoyment that you get out of them.
I've heard that these are actually really, really legendary. Linus has a set of these. I asked him about the other day. I said, "Do you have any Odysseys?" And he said that he has some LCD2s. I don't know if he uses those as daily drivers, but I mean, a lot of people have recommended them.
You mean Linus from Linus Tech Tips, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Could have been Linus Torvalds. There are a lot of Linuses.
Surprisingly.
It's a common Finnish name?
Something like that.
I think.
Let's just go with that.
Sure, let's go with that. Let's try not to offend too many countries on our, 0th episode.
I mean, we either have to go for none or all, so...
Fair enough.
I don't know. Sometimes I like a challenge, but maybe not this time. Speaking of...
Next thing, let's just punch a producer in the face and call it a day.
Well, technically, I'm our producer, so I'm just gonna punch myself in the face.
Okay, maybe not then.
I mean,
maybe not.
Maybe not today. Speaking of, let's see. He actually reviewed a set of the HD800s, which is the next one on our list.
Nice. Yeah, so the next up on our list is Sennheiser HD800s. These guys are kind of...
Some that I actually have heard.
Oh, nice. These guys are kind of the... they're about $1,000, and they're kind of the detail and soundstage kings. Pretty much like very, very few headphones, unless you start getting into like super pricey stuff. Just have the detail these guys have the, soundstage these guys have. And they're kind of the whole package. They're really comfortable, they sound great. The only downside to them that I've personally noticed is they can be a bit picky about amps. They like some tube amps, but not others. They like some solid state amps, but not others. It's kind of almost random. You kind of almost have to go to audio shows and just like demo your HD800s on like every amp in the room to find one that really...
See, that's the thing I've heard with them is that they are so, I guess, They provide such clarity that you can really hear the faults in each amp that you hook them up to.
Yeah, definitely.
So, and actually, the next ones past that, I actually am not familiar with either of these. So this is up entirely into your super baller range.
Fair enough. Yeah. So yet again, at $1,000, we've got the Focal Eliers. Focal is a French speaker maker that just in the past year or so has gotten into making really, really impressive headphones. And as I said, at $1,000, we have the Focal Elier, and it's just got, really good detail. Really, it's a great headphone to live with, and it's super, super warm. Think like a really, really warm HD800 instead of neutral.
Think of a warm fire on a cold winter day.
Exactly, and it is super, super warm. Like, I have some amps that are warm, and I can't actually plug this into them because it's just too much, and everything turns like muddy when I plug it into my super warm amps.
The mixtape becomes fire. It's too warm.
That is a
bad jokes. Okay.
Please don't. And that is a deep cut, my friend. That is a deep cut.
You're gonna have to solo it from here on out, man.
No.
All right.
And then at $4,000, which I realize that's a big jump, but in my personal opinion, there's a lot of stuff in there, and it's all kind of preference. Like Odyssey has the LCD3 and LCD4, but in my opinion, they're not really worth the money over the LCD2. You've got some of the higher end hi-fi men stuff, but there are issues with their customer support and warranties and build quality. And you've got a bunch of other random stuff like electrostatic headphones that we'll probably talk about in a future show. But
all across the board.
Yeah, tons of stuff. But in terms of, dynamic, like a planar headphone that can be driven from a normal amp, in my opinion, the Focal Elier is kind of the best in the business right now. It's a lot more neutral than the Focal Elier. I'm sorry. It's got great, really nice, hard-hitting bass. It's got just great detail all the way into the treble. It's just got super smooth mids. It's just an amazing headphone for the price, and it's kind of worth its price,
And with that, too, we're eventually going to be talking about diminishing returns at some point, just to kind of help fill out the gaps there as to why there's such a big gap in between the 1 and the 4,000 range.
Yeah, that will help as well. And there's also a pretty big gap between the $300 and the $1,000 range. But also that range is there's not that many great things in there that I can really recommend that aren't just like, there's a lot of stuff that's just like, try it, see if you like it. If you don't, then it's not for you, and that's okay.
Exactly. And with that being said, this list will probably expand and change as time goes on. This is just like a, at the moment right now kind of thing. So we start with the SHP 9500s at the bottom, and then the Focal Utopia being kind of at the best in the business without going into, like stacks or anything like that, because that's an entirely different animal.
Oh, yeah. And like we said, we'll probably talk about that on a future episode of the show.
Exactly. Now, this whole list has been open backs also, and we do have a short list of closed back headphones, and that actually gets a little bit interesting.
Yeah, you want to jump into our first entry there, which is the Sennheiser 598C at $100, because you've heard them, you've done a review of them.
Yes. So compared to the 598, the normal opens, the 598 CS, which are the closed back versions, they recently came out, and they actually are $50 less on Amazon. They're at $100 right now. And comparatively, the open 598s are, as you said, a little more A-shaped. And I found the 598C to be a little bit more V-shaped. Now I figured this is probably because they're closed, and closed headphones tend to, in some cases have more of that V shape to them. They didn't blow me out of the water. They aren't like the best things on the planet, but for $100 or even $150, which is their MSRP, I found them to be very good closed back headphones. Actually, I'd say on par with the on par with the open 598s in comfort, if not a little bit better, and reasonably isolating. They don't bleed too much. Obviously, a little bit if you turn them way up, but I can see these headphones being really good for someone who needs a affordable. Reasonably good sounding mobile over-ear set of cans. And actually right above that is
well, I gotta ask, so if those are V-shaped and the 598s are A-shaped, can I like combine them in some way to get basically a neutral headphone?
wouldn't that be imagine if there was a machine where you could just combine, like a fusion machine, you just put in two pair of headphones and you get something out the middle. I would throw in HiFiman HE 500s and Sennheiser HD 650s.
That would get you like the warmest headphone ever made. It would be amazing.
It would be beautiful. It would be just a fantastic beast.
You say that now.
Well, you're right. I learned that lesson about warmth the hard way when I was trying to use my HD 650s on the Asgard 2. It was interesting, to say the least.
Remember what I said about the Focal E-Lears and getting muddy? That's pretty much what you experienced, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, the Asgard's such a great amp, but I got it for the HD 700s to kind of mellow them out. And with the 650s, it was just too much warmth.
Fair enough.
So, I mean, the 650s ironically sounded better with the Fulla than they did with the Asgard 2 for me. So with that being said, our earlier mentions from the open back series is also a closed back headphone, the Monoprice M560, which actually has little magnetic doors on it you can use to make them open or close back.
Yeah, it's just got little magnetic wooden cups that just, magnet themselves right to the back and become closed. And the sound gets a little bit woollier. It gets, it loses a bit of texture in the highs, a little bit of texture in the mids, but it's still an amazing headphone for the price.
And something like that takes a lot of planning, because if you take a set of HiFiman and you cover them up, they just instantly die.
Yeah, they just instantly sound like garbage. But like these actually sound pretty good, and they're pretty isolating. And all in all, like they're, the reason they're in both categories is pretty much they're one of the most versatile headphones you can buy, and they sound amazing. Yeah. They're kind of like the killer deal in audio right now.
Right. Which actually that's part of why I'm really excited to get the review out on them too.
Yeah.
And then right under that, at $50 more, is the Modhouse Audio Argon.
Yeah, they're not super common. They're a mod of the Fostex T50 RP headphone, and they're closed back, and they sound really good. They sound kind of like baby LCD2s is how I would describe them. They're kind of a warm, dark sound. They've got pretty decent detail for the price, for the $250 price tag. The only downside to these, which is the same downside that the LCD2s have, is these aren't super easy to drive. You're not going to get good power off your phone. You're not going to drive them great off of like the AudioQuest Dragonfly Black. They're pretty much for home use.
Another excuse to just kind of lock yourself in your room and just listen to music forever.
Yep, exactly.
That's what I plan on doing anyway.
Yep.
And right under that, $1,500 to $1,800 is the Mr. Speakers. I got alpha pads from them that I've actually really enjoyed.
Nice. Yeah, they have a headphone called the Either C, and so the Either C is $1,500. The Either C Flow, which is the upgraded version, is $1,800. And I personally strongly suggest getting the Flow because it's well worth the extra $300. But if your budget can't quite get there, the Either C is still a great closed headphone for the price. And, it's pretty neutral. It doesn't have the best euphony. It doesn't have it isn't the most fun headphone, but it's fairly neutral. It's got pretty good sound, and closed headphones aren't really, it's not a big market for higher end closed stuff. So, this is in a very rare, very small list of good closed headphones.
Yeah, it too, one of the things, like you said, most of the people who are spending thousands and thousands are going to be getting open backs.
Yeah, And then at the top end of closed at $2,300, you've got the Sony MDR Z1R, which
surprise,
which Sony has the world's worst naming scheme. This is different than the MDR1Z, and it's different than the 1R, and Sony's naming scheme is just the worst.
So it would appear.
Yeah. What this is it's a closed headphone, but it physically looks open because the back of the cup is open, but there's a big piece of felt between the driver and the back of the cup so that there's very little sound leak. And these are absolutely incredible. They're without a doubt some of the best headphones I've ever heard. Even being closed, they still have amazing imaging, amazing soundstage. They've got slightly accentuated bass, but like not enough to call them warm or call them neutral. It's just kind of like, I didn't know this is what I wanted, but this is what I wanted.
Now you recently got a set of these, didn't you?
I did. They're just amazing. They were well worth their money.
Beautiful. And you know what? That actually wraps up our list, and right on time, within a minute on the dot, we are right at the close of our episode 0.
Yeah. So we're going to have listener feedback in future episodes. Obviously, this is the first episode and no one's listened yet, so we don't have it now. But in the future, you can email us at theunnamedaudioPodcast@gmail.com, and we'll try and read some of your feedback on the show. And, we want you guys to participate too. So if you guys want to do any reviews or, give us decent, pretty decent quality, try not to just record it off your phone. Try and record it with an okay microphone or something.
Effort if you were making the podcast yourself. And that being said too, you can actually leave a comment. I'll be posting videos in the future on SoundCloud, YouTube, and other formats, so you can leave a comment on there too, and I'll be making sure to check those regularly. So if you post a comment or email us anywhere, your comment will be read, and I will do my best to respond to it and try and incorporate your advice.
Yeah, definitely.
So with that being said, I really hope you guys stick around. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're on SoundCloud, follow, and stick around because we plan on doing these once a week.
And on that bombshell, bye-bye, everybody.
Peace.